latest gang update from Necromunda sees the ash waste nomads bursting from the irradiated storm. So grab your respirator and let's have a look. Tribes of the Wasteland is the latest book from Games Workshop, and in it we get new rules for the nomads, new fighter types, new exotic pets, new weapons and new abilities. Like the Ironheads update, the gang as a whole operates largely the same. Fast ambush specialists with great skill access. In fact, the main body of the gang is identical to the one that we saw in the Book of the Outlands. The only addition to the existing fighter types are the inclusion of some new exotic beasts and a new ammo type. Let's get a few of the more common questions out of the way before we start. There's no big bug. Stormcallers and prospects don't come with a dismounted option, and there's no adaptation to hive combat. There's a designer's note at the beginning of the book that explains that nomads are designed for an Outlands campaign, and that is reflected in their rules. You can take them into a Dominion campaign, but they will sacrifice a lot of their strengths. If I'm being honest, initially I was a little disappointed, but the more time I spent with the book, the more it grew on me. Necromunda is a game of stories and narrative, and after a couple of weeks going over the book, I think that Nomads might be the purest example of a narrative gang so far. After the sheer gluttony of options and variables that Venators gave us recently, it's easy to feel underwhelmed when initially skimming through this book. But as a very wise man once said, comparison is the thief of joy, and there's definite joy to be found here. Nomads are restricted by their very nature as outsiders, and Games Workshop have baked that into their rules. And the designers have decided to represent that through restriction and limitation. And honestly, I respect that. Now, let's look at what's new. Starting with electrostatic weaponry. This comes in a variety of ammos, mods and accessories. This new weapon type delivers an anti-vehicle specific trait, Haywire. If a weapon has this trait, instead of rolling to wound, roll a d6, and on a result of a 4+, the vehicle is wounded. That's wounding a ridge hauler on a 4+. And when you consider that you can grab an electrostatic generator for your heavy blaster or charge caster for 70 creds, you really start adding to the fun. And there's also the electrostatic missiles for 30 creds, electrostatic shotgun rounds for 15 creds, an electrostatic disruptor for your chain lance at 20 creds, electrostatic booby traps, and a piece of equipment called the electrostatic pulse emitter that has an area effect of 12 inches that causes all vehicles in that range to be hit by an AP-1 damage to attack with the Haywire trait, and also changes their status to stalled. This single trait adds a huge level of disruption and destruction to the nomad tactics, giving them a much needed edge against the mechanical superiority of other gangs. Now, it has no effect on fighters and doesn't pin unless the weapon has its own strength value. These are all available at the Nomad Trading Post, which has its own weapons, armour, equipment, bionics and weapon accessories. The Nomads use a scavenge mechanic that replaces rarity or legality rolls, so the few Imperial weapons that are available are set at a higher scavenge rating to reflect their uncommon use among Nomads. The majority of the weapons are what is available for the fighters at creation, with the addition of the shotgun, las gun and las pistol, booby traps and the chain lance mod. There's the aforementioned electrostatic generator, which is a new weapon accessory, and a couple of other unique equipment items, including the electrostatic pulse emitter we talked about, as well as booby traps, which come in electrostatic, shock and gas varieties. There's also the treatment pouch, which for 50 creds lets a fighter perform the medical escort action even if they normally couldn't. This costs no creds to perform, but a roll of 6 is treated as stabilised rather than fully recovered to represent its primitive nature. Venom sacs cost 30 creds and can increase the potency of weapons using the toxin or gas trait for an attack. So pass an initiative test and they reduce the opponent's toughness by 1, giving you a greater chance of removing that 3 wound leader from the board. Nomads have their own 4 unique chems with some great benefits, but they all come with some pretty gnarly side effects for real risk and reward play. Milk of the Harpy, which gives you 2-inch plus movement and +1 attack, but means that you suffer a flesh wound if you don't finish your activation at least 5 inches from where you start. Then we have Ash Orchid Venom, which removes flesh wounds at the end of your activation, but if you fail a willpower test, you may only perform 1 action. Tears of the Storm gives you an extra action during your activation, but grants you the insane condition during the end phase. You have to roll to see if the effects wear off, but if it does, you still keep the insane condition. Duststalker's Mandible means that you can ignore the visibility rule, but it's highly addictive, so if you can't shake the addiction, you'll have to pay 2d6 times 10 for the antidote, or keep feeding it. Dustback Helamites are now available at the trading post. So for 60 creds, you can equip anyone with a mutated flea mount. This is huge for Nomads, as prior to this, even at Movement 6, they were sorely lacking in speed when it came to Ash Waste scenarios, especially rolling roads. Now Games Workshop have addressed this with enough confidence to give them a rolling road scenario built specifically for the Nomads. Since we're on the subject of bugs, let's look at the new exotic pets, and why not start with the Unbound Helamite as it's particularly relevant here. For 30 creds, your leader, champion, stormcaller and prospects can take up to 2 of these pets, which behave like other exotic beasts but have a unique bonus to mounted fighters. If you're mounted on a Helamite and you get pinned, as long as you have your Unbound Helamite within an inch, you can pass an initiative test and the pet becomes pinned instead. This is explained with the incredibly cinematic image of leaping from one Helamite to another as it's shot from underneath you. So now, rolling roads can be a stampede of Helamites, both mounted and unbound, chasing down a convoy who are desperately firing at the Nomads as they leap from mount to mount, which sounds pretty cool to me. The next exotic beast is the Ashwing Helamite, a smaller winged cousin to the Dustback, or the female of the species if you believe Vetrith Quithalfex. It has an AP -1 toxin bite, and these are available to your leader and champions, who can take up to 2 for 30 creds each. What makes them special, apart from their 9-inch range, is the Ashwing lure mechanic, which means for a basic action you can deploy a lure and the Ashwings treat it as the owner. The lure can be moved like an ammo crate and it can't be targeted, and means that you can control them in a single group activation. This means that you can leave a lure near an objective or in a bottleneck to grant a degree of board control, which adds another layer of tactical nuance to the Nomads. Finally, we come to the Arthramite Spineworms, an exotic beast exclusively available to the new Shadar hunters. Rocking in at 45 creds, these dog-sized worms can burrow through impassable terrain and rout out the most dug-in rattling sniper, delivering a strength 3 rending bite. At movement 6, they can cover ground quickly, and thanks to their low profile, they have a -1 to hit penalty and can't be hit by stray shots. Since we're talking Shadar hunters, the new fighter type for Nomads are 65 credit specialists with the gang fighter keyword with movement 6, weapon skill and ballistic skill 4+, strength and toughness 3, 1 wound, 3+ initiative and 2 attacks with cunning as a primary skill. And they bring some new tricks and toys to the gang. The main trick is the awesome Wasteland ambush skill. At the start of any end phase after the first, you can deploy them anywhere on the battlefield at least 9 inches from an enemy model, in a variation of previous infiltration actions. Unlike the Nacht Goal or Infiltrate skill, however, there's no restriction on line of sight, meaning your opponent can't game your deployment. So now you can burst from the sand directly in front of your opponent to fulfill your Verdekin fantasies, including sandworms. tiny little sandworms. Remember that comment I made about restrictions and nomads being designed for the Outlands campaign earlier? Well, here's an example of that. This skill is only available in an Ash Wastes battle. Now, I was gutted when I first read that, but honestly, it makes sense. And again, I kind of have to respect the doubling down on thematic restrictions here. I can see a lot of players trying to convince their arbitrators otherwise, though. The Shadar hunters want to make use of that base 2 attack with a slew of new melee weapons unique to them. Bone Talons are 20 creds, hitting its strength, -1 AP, damage 1 with rending. The Chitin Dagger is 15 creds knife, hitting its strength with damage 1, backstab and rending. Chitin Gauntlets are 25 creds with a +1 strength, damage 1 and pulverize. And Insective Knives will cost you 20 creds each, hit at strength with a -1 AP, damage 1 with backstab and chem delivery. The Trident is a 30 cred, 2-inch versatile weapon, hitting a +1 strength with -1 AP, damage 1 and shock. Venom Staves are 35 creds with -1 AP, toxin and pulverize. And lastly, we have the Venom Whip, a 30 cred, 2-inch versatile toxin weapon. Shadar hunters also have access to venom sacs from creation, so they can make the most of the Venom Stave and Venom Whip. As well as needing their own trading post, nomads also need a way to flesh out their hangers-on to complement the Lady of the Ash and Dune Scuttle and the Arthrobite Herder. Games Workshop have provided a way to add Hive Scum, Bounty Hunters and House Agents, but instead of Dramatis Personae, we get a cool system of generating customised fighters. Nomads can hire up to 5 nomad outcasts. These function in the same way as Hive Scum do for other gangs. And for 30 creds, you get a movement 5, weapon skill and ballistic skill 4+, strength and toughness 3, 1 wound, 4 initiative, 1 attack outcast. This can take 60 creds worth of weapons and equipment from a limited list, and they also come equipped with ash cloaks and sky mantles, so they provide a cheap way to bolster your numbers. They also get access to the Nomad Harrier, which functions like a bounty hunter. For 80 creds, you can choose between 3 different profiles and get 150 creds worth of weapons and equipment from the Chieftain list or trading post. They come with 3 random skills from the main trees: agility, combat, shooting, brawn and ferocity, rolled on a d6 from the table of your choice, or alternatively you can pick a random skill and have 1 chosen skill. The Harrier grants bonus creds to the gang if they take out a fighter or vehicle while the Harrier is in their employment. So if your opponent deletes a fighter, you get half the fighter's value rounded up to the nearest 5. And if you wreck a vehicle, you roll a d6, and on a 3 or higher, you gain d6 times 10 creds. However, with the Harriers being soldiers of fortune, it means that they expect a certain kickback, and they can walk if they don't find the gang rewarding enough. There's also a customizable house agent mechanic, giving you multiple profiles to build unique house agents that you can petition to join you. They can access skills from brawn, combat, ferocity, leadership, shooting, or wasteland using the same system as the Harrier. They can take up to 150 creds of equipment from their chieftain list and come included with an ash cloak and sky mantle. Nomad house agents also get to roll to summon 2 spirit warriors, making them a bit more punchy. So let's talk about the warrior spirits. This is a fleshed out version of the summoning mechanic introduced in the previously released Apocrypha. It's been expanded to 24 spirits, including the original 6, divided between 4 distinct nomad clans. So you pick the clan that aligns most with your build and playstyle. Then in the pre-battle stage, you can roll a d6 for your chieftain and any champions you have to generate spirit powers from the table. You have to declare that you're using it before you activate, and you can only use 1 per activation, and warrior spirits can only be used once per battle. This means that there's a level of randomness to the powers available in each battle, but will definitely provide some variety, and obviously prevents any min-maxing or power spam, because some of them are very good. Ergnag, or the dust wall crawlers, have the spirits of chitin, toxins, and insects, and can reduce your enemy's weapons' AP to nothing, give you toxic blood, or clog engines with swarms of insects. Bakhau, or the oil rung stalkers, have the spirits of miasma, carapace, and mutation, and can become radioactive and gain rage on all attacks, pass through terrain, or become weightless and essentially fly around, increase strength and toughness by 1, or increase armor by +1. Sungar have the spirits of scrap technology and electro, making people around them subject to the blind condition, gain shock or have shock trigger on any successful roll. They can heal all flesh wounds or increase movement by 2 inches. Kartoka, the lead sky seers, have the spirits of eclipse, chem, and chance, and can gain the sever trait, count as in full cover while moving, or give melee weapons -3 AP and +1 damage. Now that's just a few of the listed powers, and while they are random, most of them are great, and all of them are extremely thematic and give a cinematic quality to the gang in a similar way to tactics cards. Speaking of which, we get a full D66 table of new tactics cards available for use, as well as 2 scenarios, including the Rolling Roads one I mentioned earlier, and a really cool Dune Scuttler hunt that can be played as a multiplayer game. So, Tribes of the Wasteland is here, and despite my initial misgivings, I have to say I like it. It is frustrating that a percentage of your gang is locked to the wastes, and you're definitely going to feel that baked in cost of ash cloaks and sky mantles in other campaign types. However, for pure distilled narrative and a rule set that reflects the lore and thematics of a gang, you can't ask for more. Nomads aren't at home in the hive, and you will have to earn your victories the nomad way, through tactical play, clever deployment, and by making your opponent face you on your terms. You will struggle late campaign with the restrictive trading post, but you'll have to focus on greater numbers rather than toys, or get a couple of Dune Scuttlers and lots of bugs. When the House of Books dropped, people bemoaned a simpler, more brutal necromunda where a bolter was rare and every victory felt earned. I think this book might just capture a little bit of that. However, I'd love to hear what you think, so drop me a comment below, and I'll see you in the Underhive.